organizers, particularly Professor Carlos, for giving me the opportunity to participate in this very, very unique conference talking about Ubuntu, natural law and human rights, which I think is timely, particularly at this period of the human history with so many confrontations, upheavals, and so forth. So we thank them for choosing such a topic which seeks to address some of the problems confronting the world. I chose my title as Our Humanity as an Instrument to Transform Our World. And I think that must sound a bit mouthful and somewhat radical. However, I believe that is one of the best approaches that we can make. Because in one of the summaries I sent to the organizers, I stated that any meaningful action on human rights, natural law, or Ubuntu should be rooted in the humanity in us. And this can be practically demonstrated in selfless devotion and commitment in furthering the interests of all creation. So basically, I hold the view that the humanity, which I will explain later, should be the central tool that we can use to address some of our intractable problems facing the world. If you look at the human history from the best that we know, the world has always been confronted with two opposing forces, good and evil. What the good aspect seeks to do is to help us to progress, to be united, to have peace, and so forth. On the other hand, the evil part is to seek the destruction of us. So if you are a human being and you stand for evil, then obviously you are opposed to the rest of the humanity. And that is what my topic is about. That within every living being, there are those two opposing forces, evil and good. And while evil is rooted in selfishness, bad intentions, devilish ideas, destructive activities, substantially that inordinate desire to dominate and control others for the selfish benefit of the perpetrator. Whereas those who stand for good are the ones who push so that we can have peace, we can have love, we can have one another. So in this presentation, I want us to focus on the fact that any person in his or her position in life can be a tool for social transformation and development. And how do you do so? By allowing yourself to be influenced by the humanity in you. And that humanity is manifested in the good intentions that I have already referred to. If you look at our world as of today, as I stated earlier, we know that there's a lot happening. Climate change, inhumanity in so many areas, destructive intentions, refugee crisis, wars and threats of war, and so forth. So I want us to see how best we can control all these problems by using the human part of our lives. Anyway, before I continue further, let me just disclose my bias and also what I may call subjective approach to the issue. Because my influence is based upon my traditional upbringing from a remote village deep down in Ghana, years ago, parental influence, community engagement, teachers over the years, and also my Christian faith, particularly within the Catholic faith. These have all influenced me, and I'm not suggesting that everybody has to go through the same. Nevertheless, I believe that when we talk about humanity, every human being has that in himself. Christ gave us a classic example in the story of the parable of the wheat and the tares, that there is an element of evil or bad in every person. However, we as human beings have the opportunity to control. If we choose the path of evil, it's a conscious effort. If you choose the path of good, it's also a conscious effort. How come? Because I know as a fact that all religions throughout the world, whether not traditional religion, whatever, they all have one thing in common. They all preach about what is good. So irrespective of whether you are religious or not, this type of natural nature is in all of us, good and evil. If we use the biblical analogy, we have a particular case of the life of Cain, when God spoke to him and said that evil is trying to take control over you. Its desire is to control you. But you should rather what? Control it. So within us, we have that kind of capability, and that is based on what the free will that our external maker, and whether you call him God or whatever, but for the Christian, we say God. But others will say Allah, others will say Buddha, so many. But the fact that there is the external source of our existence. So I also hold the belief that I doubt if anybody can claim that he doesn't recognize the existence of God. The only difference is that one can say, I don't believe in it. But the fact that there is a external connection to our existence cannot be doubted. Because there's no one who has been able to prove to us that he or she just came by himself, by whatever means. So somehow there is that element in us always searching for that connection. That's why St. Augustine says that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. That external power, you can call him by any other name. So there is almost always everyone who yearns to be connected to that source. And one good thing about that source or external power is the desire for all those who follow him or understand him to do what is good. So if within the world, our desire is to do what is good, then obviously we are doing the will of that external power. And if we choose the path of evil, then we are opposed to that humanity in us that is yearning to do what is right and what is good for all of us. Once you tap into the humanity, you find your life in a way that everything that you do is for the benefit of others. Selfishness is gone. You have element of love, you have element of care, you have element of desire to help others, empathy, mercy, forgiveness, and so forth. Whereas, if you choose the path of evil, then everything about you is what? Wickedness, destructiveness, destroying others for your benefit. If we can look at the the earlier philosophers of natural law, like St. Thomas Aquinas, you can see that they were all preaching the same thing, trying to suggest that there's an external force that is directing our minds and our actions to do what is good for others. So Ubuntu is virtually doing the same thing. And if we are now talking about human rights and humanitarian law, all these are what? Trying to tell us that there are other members of this world who deserve the same love and care that we have for ourselves. And so if you go back to our biblical position, when Jesus told us about the two commandments, the two major commandments, love the Lord your God with all your spirit and everything, he says also your neighbor. So even within the secular world, when we talk about love for one another, we are indirectly admitting that there is something that connects us to one another. And my position is that that connection is derived from the humanity in us. So if you are a human being and you want to care for others, tap into that spirit in you. So we need to nurture and nourish that humanity in us so that we can use it for all the others in the world. Whether at your workplace, whether at your shrine, in your homes, in your walking through the street, wherever, your profession, your career, make sure that we use that humanity in us in carrying out our activities. Because there's no way that you can say that, well, when I'm at work, everything is professional, so that humanity must exist somewhere. No, they go together, hand in hand. And particularly, we can use the case of teaching. A lot of teachers are top-class teachers in terms of their understanding of the subject matter. However, they are disasters to society because they teach only curricula. And that is a big mistake. In your teaching, you must see that you are teaching human beings. You are not just teaching a course. So you must have that kind of integration that some of the social scientists will say, participant observation. You are deeply involved. For me, as a teacher, when I'm in the classroom, all the students before me are my mothers and my fathers and brothers and sisters and my daughters and sons. So I see them with that humanity in connecting, and I understand their pain and suffering. But if you merely teach and walk away, some of them may have some problem that you don't even realize until you get to know. Time doesn't allow for me to go into all kinds of details, but I can give you some specific cases where some students will walk to me privately and say, Prof, thank you. There are many students who still call me father, daddy, left and right. Why? Because they saw in me being a daddy to them. There are cases where some students are in difficult problems, could be financial, name it, or even they need counseling. That empathy will allow them to reveal their troubled state unto you. I recall some years ago when I was teaching in Botswana, there was one guy in class who was known to be what you may call the macho type. Anytime I tried to share stories with them, biblical issues, he was the type who was almost always trying to suggest that they don't waste my time. Before I left, one day I was in my office and this boy walked in with another guy and he was weeping like a baby. I'm not kidding. All simply to say he didn't realize how vulnerable he was. So please, let us do that. One area that I think we are also failing the world is in teaching, or what I may call education. I suspect that we have failed as a society if we do not seriously look at education in the proper context. A lot of the education systems around the world focuses substantially on trying to determine the top class, the excellent ones. I think that is a failure. Education should be a tool for training so that it provides knowledge and skills to students. The byproduct can be a top class emerging, there's no doubt about that, but that shouldn't be the central focus. We should rather be trying to provide everyone with the basic knowledge and skills so that they can be utilized for the benefit of all, fulfilling the role of humanity. If we don't allow the humanity to take the central control of our lives, the opposite, as I said earlier, will become the evil one. As I said earlier, that no one can claim not to know God, I need to point out a few points here so that we can conclude. If you look at what Paul wrote in Romans chapter 1, he says the attributes are there for all to know. They are there. And in our culture, the Accra people of Ghana, we say that Ubin Chere Abofra Nyame, nobody points out God to a child. The child finds God himself or herself. And if you look at what William Wordsworth wrote in his Ode of Immortality, he almost said the same thing, that when the child is born, there is a direct light connecting him or her to her maker. So you see, there is this element in humanity recognizing that there is that supreme being through whom we have that kind of good desire in all of us to do what is good. On the contrary, if one is pursuing the path of evil intentions, it becomes too obvious, because I can't understand how any normal human being with that humanity himself will tolerate things like the Holocaust, the slave trade, the lynching of fellow human beings, and rejoicing. And I usually say that the best gift anyone can give on this earth is to put a smile on the face of a fellow human being. And you sit back and rejoice to see that person happy. On the contrary, the most wicked thing that can emanate from any human being is to cause pain to a fellow human being and sit by and watch and rejoice to see that person in pain. Please. That is contrary to humanity in us. I would like to conclude with a very beautiful story that a certain pastor who lived in Ghana some years ago, I always quote him wherever I am, and it's so inspiring. It's called Father Kempin. And he said that, during the days of Christ, if we read his stories very well, there are two lakes in his days. There were two lakes, the Dead Sea and Galilee. In the case of the Dead Sea, water flows into the lake. It doesn't go anywhere. It stays there, and it stinks, and it becomes useless. Fishes don't survive, they die in that lake. On the contrary, on Lake Galilee, the water flows in and flows out. That should be the life of all of us. The humanity in us should be nurtured for us to be a source of blessing unto others, like the Galilee. Whatever comes to us is not for us alone, it's for others to enjoy. And we should keep in mind that there's nobody on this earth who can claim that he owns anything. He merely has possession and custody, because nobody can create anything. We only multiply or add value to what has been created by our external authority. So thank you very much. Let the humanity in us be a source of blessing to others, providing love, care, protection, and that mercy to all the world so that we can have peace. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Bye.